Today's video, we're going to talk about Analyzify for Shopify. This is server-side tracking for Shopify. That is dead easy to do, ultimately. And will deliver 20% more conversion tracking data, which is key to getting the most out of Google Ads. A 20% increase in conversion tracking data, by the way, just to put it in a frame of reference for you, can mean absolutely a 50% increase in profit from your Google Ads long-term as you train the algorithm how to actually run your ads more efficiently, of which I'm going to share proof of that in this particular video. So server-side tracking is where everything is going today, not only with Google Ads, but Facebook ads. All the major ad platforms are switching to it. The problem is, it's hard to use and hard to set up. But Analysify for Shopify had made it dead easy, so there's really not that complaint anymore. Not only that, it's hard to maintain if you're using something like Stape or Google Cloud Platform in order to set up your server-side tracking for your e-commerce business that you run through Shopify. So Analysify, while not cheap, and it's actually more expensive than Stape and some of these other solutions to do server-side tracking, it is the best option in my opinion, and to the point where every single client at our firm, I'm going to 100% recommend to do it. And I'm recommending it to anybody who just uses Shopify in general that may be watching this. But I'm going to go through the details on Analysify, of which is a Shopify app that you can install on your Shopify store and that will allow you the best tracking for your company. So with that said, you get what you pay for in terms of Shopify tracking. I've been through the mill with different apps to set up tracking code on Shopify sites. I've actually made a video about a year to 2 years ago about how these apps are really shitty. And actually, Analyzify is the one that Shopify itself recommends that you would use for tracking, dropping of tracking code in the appropriate spots on Shopify to do the best tracking possible. Now, the reason why you need an app instead of like with a WordPress website is because dropping the tracking code on the site is not so easy. That's why we use apps in the first place. The question is, what app do we use? Well, more recently, the Google and YouTube app was the best way to install conversion tracking code and tracking code onto your Shopify site. And it was the more importantly, most reliable way to do it, because over time, Shopify came up with so many updates that the apps would break a lot. And a lot of that clearly had to do with these apps are only charging like $10 a month. They don't really have the resources to keep up with all the updates that Shopify has done. And so therefore, the Google and YouTube app was the best way to go. Well, now the Analyzify app is an even better way to go. Not to say that it would be as reliable as the Google and YouTube app, which is rock solid stable now, for the most part. The Analyzify app will get you more conversion data, like 20% more conversion data as I've tested, which is why you want to use it. They're charging 10 times as much money as the usual app does and used to charge, of which they actually have money to hire competent developers that are constantly staying abreast of all the changes with Shopify, so the app stays compatible with Shopify and will continue to track everything like it's supposed to track. So, and then with that, custom tracking setups on Shopify, if you're going to go with an alternative option like using Stape.io, Google Cloud Platform, it's going to take more maintenance in general. So yes, it may be cheaper to use one of those platforms, and actually not even that cheaper, or could be just as expensive, by the way. But now you need a developer to manage those, whereas in Analyzify, they have their own developers. They specialize specifically in tracking Shopify purchases and allow you to track purchases on Microsoft ads, Google ads, also on Facebook ads. And they do it so well, you're basically getting a developer as a part of your pricing. So therefore, that's why I mentioned it's the best option, even though you could do server-side tracking with Stape.io, technically cheaper on paper, and get the same 20% conversion lift that you normally would get with server-side tracking. through them specifically. For that matter, I wanted to share a case study here that shows physically how the different tracking options that you have with Shopify, how they stack up, and how much more money you're going to make with one option versus another. What I did, and this is something that you could obviously easily do for yourself, you can go ahead in your, let's say, Google Ads account and set up different conversion goals for different ways to track your conversions through the shopping cart, of which you can set up a regular Google Ads conversion goal, set up Google and YouTube app on Shopify, and you can track purchases that way. Then you can set up another conversion goal that uses that same app plus and add it in. Enhanced conversion tracking, meaning that what you're doing is you're tracking conversions the usual way, client side, not server side, but you're supplementing the data with extra customer data, users' email addresses, users' phone numbers that you get when they check out, sending that user data to Google, and then Google, when they don't see somebody purchased from the cookie that was dropped on the user's browser, they can use that email or phone number to identify the person and that they came from that ad originally, because Google keeps tabs on everybody who clicks on ads and which users of theirs does it, because, you log into Google using an email or phone number, given that, with your Google account. And so when they click on an ad, they store that user's activity. So when you provide the email or phone number back later on, they see, oh, I know which user you're talking about. So it supplements the normal data that you're able to get with normal cookie-based conversion tracking, which cookies, a lot of times they get blocked, like with privacy browsers like Brave.com. If the person gets to the site and they purchase later on, you're not going to attribute that customer sale in Google Ads appropriately because the cookie wasn't able to track that user on the second visit itself, which is where enhanced conversion tracking is going to help piece that data together, and so that you could track that person as coming from Google Ads and what caused that purchase to come through. So there's a bit more to it than that, but that's the simplified explanation as to why enhanced conversion tracking, or what it does, and ultimately it tracks a little bit more conversion data. But your other option would be server-side tracking with something like Analyzify or State.io or the Google Cloud platform. And that is an app that you install, of course, on Shopify, and then you can set up server-side tracking through them. What I've done here is, just like I mentioned you could do, you can set up different conversion goals for each one of these, and then observe how the revenue that you're tracking is different from each one and decide which one you want to go with. That said, if you set up the same conversion goals, just like I said, I guarantee you'll see something pretty much like this. Whereas in our case study for a furniture seller, as I've got here on the board here, we tracked over a 14-day period, 53,000 in cart sales. When I compared that to enhanced conversion tracking using the Google and YouTube app, we got 57,000 in sales. And with Analysify using full server-side tracking, we got 65K in sales, which is going from regular to enhanced conversion tracking, client side, not server side. We had a 7% increase in conversion data, and going from client-side tracking with no enhanced conversion tracking to Analysify's server-side tracking, we got a 23% increase in conversion data. And the difference between enhanced conversion tracking, client-side, and server-side tracking was a 14% increase in conversion data. So if you're not even doing enhanced conversion tracking, you can get a 23% increase in conversion tracking done through the cart just by switching to Analysify, given that Analysify used to have server-side tracking as an option that was more expensive. Now, they actually they're very smart about it, telling people, it's baked right into the cake, you have to have the server-side tracking now, so they just charge more and that's it. For that matter, this is a small side story. I mean, at our agency, I'm already getting to the point where our agency is just going to raise our fees and force on all our clients server-side tracking. Why is that? Because it gets a lot more results. If we can do something, raise our fees 10%, and then add in server-side tracking, which is about what we're planning to do here, just rolling this out now, and then we can get a more than a 10% increase in sales revenue, well, that's what we're going to do, because we're not trying to be a discount PPC provider. In fact, it's pointless to hire one, right? Why would you want to make part of your profits. Makes no sense. And a lot of people fall for this trap because they don't know their numbers. And they'll say, I just want a $500 a month PPC company because it sounds cheap. And they get posed, not realizing what it actually takes to get results. And when you pay a PPC firm a cheap amount of money, all they're going to do is just do a tiny bit of work. And nobody wins in that scenario at the end of the day. Whereas the good results come from a lot of work. Yes, you pay a lot, but you get your money's worth out of it too. So it's not a zero-sum game per se, because in your market, you either do better than your competition and you make most of the money, or you make nothing anymore, especially with Google Ads, and same thing with other platforms technically as well. So you have to go ahead and you got to get with the program. You got to have server-side tracking. More and more people are switching to it, and this is just going to be like a requirement. But with that said, this in itself doesn't sound like that enticing, given that it costs money. Obviously, you got to pay for the app. You technically do have to spend, generally speaking, you can set up Analysify in a couple hours and you're done, which is why I recommend doing it now versus server-side tracking. I didn't push it too much in the past on this channel because you got to be a programmer to even know how to do it. That's not the case with Analysify. But, it costs money and people don't know why they're paying that extra money or worrying about it. More conversion data, who cares, is what they say. Well, I'm here to tell you that that amount of conversion data that you're tracking, percentage-wise, how much you're actually able to track, that directly affects how much you're making with your ad campaigns. For sure. Not maybe or if. It's absolutely going to affect your bottom line in your business. And for as hard as you work to get your ads to work and not just tracking all your results, which there's nothing to do. You just set up the tracking the right way, you, boom, instantly make more money. For you to not do this, you're crazy, basically. And you'll make not just a little bit more money tracking things a little bit better, but a lot more money. And so if you make tracking a little bit better, what you get is not only just if your tracking is 10% better, you don't just make 10% more money, you make 10% plus extra money. Why is that? Well, the algorithm gets smarter at running your ads. Particularly if you understand how tracking works and why there's flaws in it, more so the customers that you get that are not tracked as good are going to be people that come back later on. And the longer it takes them to buy, less it gets tracked, at least for those people. So, because there's different people that buy in 1 day, 90 days from the time that they click on the ad. And for that matter, the guy that clicks on the ad and buys 90 days from now, it's going to be trend to be purchasing more, because the more they're spending, the more they got to think about it before buying. So if you don't have Analyzify or server-side tracking, essentially what the algorithm's going to do is optimize around the bigger customers. So you're telling Google, please optimize for the smaller customers for me. Please do that. Versus optimize for the biggest customers. Therefore, a 10% increase in conversion data tracked is not a 10% increase in profits. It's a 20-30% increase in profits. And I've personally witnessed this. Not only have I done this case study that I just shared with you, but I've followed it up with the data about how much more revenue it actually produced for us at the end of the day once we instituted it, of which I'm going to go through here next. Before I do though, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you absolutely should. I've got the best information on the web about how to make money with ads, coming from somebody with 20 years of experience doing advertising and managing dozens of ad accounts at our firm to find out what works. And I share it here for you on this channel for free. So subscribe if you are serious about making money with ads. I've got a great blog on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog, where you can find step-by-step information from myself as well, again, on how to make money with ads, with screenshots, with everything you need to use them. So if you like the channel, you should check that blog out as well if you haven't seen it already. In addition to that, if you have any questions about anything I'm covering here, leave me a question in the comment section below. I respond to everybody who leaves me a comment in the comment section. You can also reach out to me through my Discord group, link in the description. Also through my website at guaranteedppc.com. Of which, by the way, at our agency, what I do, how I make my living, so to say, and why I'm able to bring you this content is I do coaching and consulting here at our firm. I also do done-for-you services where I set up your ads and you just get results and you pay for the results ultimately. And unlike other ad agencies though, I actually make sure that you're able to make money up front before the fee kicks in. So if we're looking to charge $2,000 a month, let's say, as our hypothetical fee, we're going to make sure you make at least $3,000 in profit before our fee kicks in. That's the kind of trial that we have at the beginning and what we do at our firm. So with that said, if you want to know how much you can make doing and working with us and with our strategies, reach out to me at Guaranteed PPC, and I will give you an 8-quarter projection of the results under our management, what we can get for you, and also what we can guarantee. I also have ad templates available. If you're in a space that I've already worked in, I can tell you the winning ads, landing pages, all of it that work for your market. You copy paste those into the ad account that you have and get the same results we got in another city or country for yourself. And I've been in hundreds of markets, so the chances are I've already got the template you're looking for, of which I can tell you the results you're going to get with it up front. So if you're interested in that, also let me know. With that said, in terms of the results, this furniture seller with the 23% increase in revenue or trackable revenue itself, we got going from here to here, the Google and YouTube app tracking without enhanced conversion tracking, to the Analyzify server-side tracking, which gives us 23% more revenue tracked, of which our normal year-over-year increase the last 2 years running was 29%. This is a pretty mature company. We're talking about a company that's, I've already been working with this client over 7 years now. Last 2 years, our average year-over-year increase in sales was 29%. So we were, in other words, getting 29% growth in our overall company revenue on average the last 2 years. So this last year was average of 29%, and then the year before an average of 29%. Of which, by the way, I mention this on an overall basis because the type of product that we were selling, a lot of people don't buy, so the tracking is kind of faulty, if you will, to some regard. But what I always do, like any e-commerce business should be doing, is measuring your success based upon total sales to total ad spend in terms of a ratio, and trying to spend more money on an ongoing basis while increasing the sales at a similar pace so that ratio stays the same. So I look at the company growth as the overall kind of marker of where we're at. We have to maintain that ratio of sales to ad spend at all times as we scale. So for that matter, we went from a 29% increase in year-over-year sales to a 49% increase in year-over-year sales after adding Analysify, which of course now is over a 365-day period. So comparing that to the year before, what this tells me and should tell you, given that we did make some other changes in that last year that we ran this case study, but I frankly didn't do enough to where most of this just simply has to be from the tracking data alone, which is why our firm's switching to purely you're going to be forced to do server-side tracking and that's it. Whereas we added more keywords, more campaigns here and there, the overall changes in the account, plus or minus 10% what we had before. Why? Because you do less in your account in terms of changes as you go along, as your account matures, because you pick all the low-hanging fruit opportunities. And so, whereas our sales went up 20%, there's no way that more than 10% of that was contributed from some of the other stuff we're doing. And for that matter, that's the high end. You could say this extra 20% in year-over-year growth was simply because we used Analysify and we switched over our tracking, or you can say 15% of it was that. You make up your own mind. I'm going to say most of this was from this. Given that our year-over-year increase that we get is normally from the little bit of things that we do year-over-year anyway, in terms of new keywords and so forth. So this premium that we got on top of the normal year-over-year growth that we got, in my mind, 80% of it has to be just from Analysify. How much more money will Analysify make you? It can literally take your growth rate, give you a 50 to 100% increase just by getting an extra 23% more conversion data in your account to use. So a 23% increase in conversion data means a 60% increase in profitability at the end of the day, or something close to that. It depends on the market you're in. If you're selling $5 stickers, it ain't going to help you that much because people buy those right away or nothing. But if you're in a market like this, hundreds of dollars of average transaction size being $500, something like that, it's going to matter a massive amount. Depending on what you're selling, this will give you, more results. But you basically should be doing it for sure, no matter what. And if you're selling anything over $50 at that price point, a lot of people are not going to buy right away. Most people aren't. which is why, by the way, your conversion rates on your website are so low, because most people coming to your site aren't ready to buy anything. They're coming there, looking around, they're going to buy it at some point in the future when they get paid, they think about it, when their wife says they can, whatever. With all that said, prices. Now, here's where you may say, I don't know, Corey. Steep.io to do server-side tracking is $50 a month. And Analysify is roughly $100 a month. So you may say, I don't know, $100 a month. That is why I did this case study here to prove to you that this is worth it. I would pay $1,000 a month for it at the end of the day, certainly. If you're doing $500,000 a year in revenue, and that's kind of questionable. At least you can see percentage-wise how much it's going to increase your sales. The more sales you have coming in already, the more it's going to help you, the less this $100 a month matters to you. But bottom line, even if you don't do it now, it would set a reminder to yourself in a year to ask yourself, should I do it now or should I not? And same thing until you actually eventually do it, because your goal obviously is to grow the company. There'll be a point where it's worth it. And State.io, even though it's cheaper, it's going to take a developer to maintain. And if you've heard anything about what I've said on other videos about tracking, is it breaks. If you set up tracking today, the chances that your tracking doesn't break in the next 10 years is like 1%. Shit breaks. You don't have to do anything wrong for it to break. Shopify updates all the time, and therefore it breaks because of that. Tracking on Shopify breaks more than any other platform I deal with. You got to be super on it. You got to have goals and backup goals to compare your primary goals so that you know if it's tracking 100%, 80%, whatever, and then fix it when it breaks. I've talked about this in other videos. Bottom line though, so you're going to have a developer to maintain this, monitor it for you. Why not just go with Analysify? You still got to make sure Analyzify doesn't break. You're not going to need a developer to maintain it, most likely. And it's going to break less than State.io is, because Analysify has got more resources and specializes in Shopify. And they have developers that work there on your behalf. So they're going to be on top of Shopify changes. And therefore, your tracking's not going to break, and you're not going to need a developer to update it. Not only that, but if your tracking breaks, your results go down the shitter, and it takes a lot of times a week plus for your results to go back to where they were with Google ads. And same thing with Microsoft ads, same thing with Facebook ads. So why go through having it break on you when you could just use Analysify, which is going to be more reliable? Even if it's 20% more reliable, it's worth it to pay that extra $50 a month, which it is. It's not technically cheaper at all, especially when you consider tracking will be broken with State.io versus Analyzify. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Hopefully that made a lot of sense, and we'll see you in the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.